And welcome back to another video. We have the February ScrawlrBox here. It has just been delivered. I have just returned from a breakaway for my birthday as well, so great timing. I have unfortunately seen a couple of spoilers whilst I've been away, but I mean that's what's going to happen when I don't see the box, and I'm sure many of you overseas viewers also have the boxes spoiled quite often, which is a shame, so I do apologise for anything like that ever happening to you. So I do have a slight inkling of what's in the box, but I've tried to skip past as much as possible. But let's just get into it and see what supplies we have in here this month. So it feels like quite a weighty box, and it's quite hard to close the box, so I'm assuming we've got some thicker supplies in here. Okay, so we have the Scrawlr zine, which we will read at the end and flip through, and I will read the hints and tips. We have the featured artwork. So this looks like a little bit of mixed media work here, on some deckled edge paper here, on multiple pieces it looks like. I can't quite work out the medium though, so that's interesting. Here is a little bit about the featured artist themselves. Kerry Lemon is a Brighton-based artist inspired by travel and responding to local plant life, landscape and histories. She loves materials and articulates her research in a multidisciplinary practice, including sculpture, painting, drawing and collage. So I'll let you read the rest of that if you'd like to, and I'm going to check out the socials after this segment of filming. Very, very nice. Oh, so is it meant to be that way? I'm not sure. Very nice. We have some paper. Let's open up the package first to see what we have before we make any more assumptions. Okay, so for the extras we have in the box, we have this lovely sticker. I like the pastel colours on that. Very, very nice. And we have a little sweet. It looks like some sort of lemon sherbet sweet. I'm sure the booklet will tell us what that is shortly. Okay, so straight into the supplies. We have some Daler Rowney System 3 fluid acrylics. Interesting. I don't think I've ever seen these before. Okay, so proudly manufactured in the UK, Daler Rowney System 3 fluid acrylics are a versatile multi-surface pigment-based acrylic paint featuring a smooth, opaque and creamy consistency. They offer a high-intensity pigment with great coverage that maintain depth of colour and vibrancy even when diluted. Interesting. So we have a cerulean, I never know how you say this, a cerulean blue hue. We have titanium white and a lemon yellow. So let's have a look at what the nibs look like. Okay, so we have a really fine nib, so almost like you use this to apply it. Okay. Oh, I'm interested. I'm very intrigued. Very, very intrigued. So that will be nice. No pumping like an acrylic marker or anything either, which does get old a little bit. I shan't lie. Then we have the Lyra Graduate Mark All Black. It's a permanent marker and ensures every creation lasts for a very long time. Once fully dry, the water-based ink dries opaque and super permanent, which means it will not smudge or fade in water. Okay, so this is the size 2.0, a nice big one. After I just complained about having to pump acrylic markers, we need to do that. Very nice. I do love a nice fresh new marker though. There is something satisfying about it. I'm backtracking. Anyway, then the last two supplies in the box are the Princeton Select Synthetic Paintbrush Short Angular Shader 1/4 inch. Very nice. It's got a bit of a jaggy edge. I wonder if that's intentional. Very, very nice. Angular shader in size 6, 1/4 inch. Okay, so that'll be interesting. So we're looking for some angles, maybe some texture with that. And then we have the Canson Mixed Media 300 GSM A5 sketch pad. So let's struggle to get into this for a couple of minutes, and then hopefully we can have a look at the texture. Oh, okay, so yes, so the artist has used this paper definitely, because it's got that kind of like faux linen texture that you have in it. Oh, very nice. So you're going to get a lot of texture. If you dry brush on this, it's going to create that texture. But with these being fluid acrylics, can you dry brush? All experiments we shall play with, I think. So very interesting. Let's have a look at the Scrawlr challenge for this month. Is Organic Origins. Oh, very broad, very nice. Very in my niche. I feel like I can do some things with that. That doesn't scare me as much as usual. So very, very interesting. Let's move these to one side. And then lastly, let's have a real quick flick through of the Scrawlr zine. So this is issue 90. I have noticed this is something they did last month as well. Instead of putting the month and year, they've now put an issue number, which I'm not sure. I quite like the month and year, but I mean, maybe there's a rhyme and reason for that. So yes, we have a sherbet lemon sweet. I will add a little bit of text over the top to tell you my rating of this sweet out of 10. I think we should start doing that because I'm a bit of a sour sweet lover, and quite frankly, finding a good sour sweet is really hard. So I'll be interested to rate the sweets, and maybe we'll have a sour rating as well for that sort of thing. Very nice. We have a little bit more about the Scrawlr artist, so I will probably read that through after I've filmed this bit. Skipped. Then we have some Scrawlr tips. So I will, there's a lot on here. There's a lot of new things to try. So I'll try all these things, and then as I'm swatching and trying these new techniques out, I will do a bit of a read of these Scrawlr tips. Then we have some artist advice as well. So maybe we'll read some of those. We'll see what they suggest, and we'll try them out. Then we have the Scrawlr Gallery, which is featured artwork from 2 months ago from you viewers who tag Scrawlr Challenge over on Instagram. This is the Chaos Confined Scrawlr Challenge, where I think we had some acrylic markers for this one. Very nice. There's some lovely artworks on here. Very different. Very, very different. Nice. Then we have the Scrawlr Top 3. So they're giving the Scrawlr Top 3 a double page spread now, so a little bit more about them. Interesting. Bit more intense, it feels a bit more rewarding than just having 3 larger pictures on the challenge page. Very good. And then we have a little bit about fingerprints of nature. This is Scrawlr Extra, so something a little bit more in depth about nature, which is very good. Very nice. So how interesting. I'm excited to try these. Like I say, I've never seen them before. I think they'll be interesting. I'm curious to see how flowing they are. They say that they're fluid acrylics, but will we be able to dry brush? Will we be able to do, things that you do with a thicker acrylic? Interesting. I'm excited. Let's get into some swatching, and then we will create some artwork based on Scrawlr Challenge Organic Origins. Let's get on with it. So let's start off with the Scrawlr tips. So there's a few headers here. Get swatching, mix new colours, create a wash, mark making. I think it's a lot of things that we would all normally probably do. There is the header create texture. There are lots of fun ways to create textures with these paints. Here are a couple of examples. Use a leaf. Take inspiration from our featured artist and incorporate some real nature. Dab your leaf into the paint and onto the page. Use salt. Water down the paint on a palette and sprinkle on some salt. Once dry, brush it off for a beautiful mottled effect. Drying time. The more paint on the page, the longer it will take to fully dry. You can tell if it's still wet as it will have a glossy sheen to it. Once dry, these paints will not reactivate with water. Add white. Adding in more of white to the other colours will make them more opaque. Add a touch in for opacity, or add in a tad more to create a creamy version of the colour you want. The marker is super opaque, so it can be used to form outlines over your paintwork with ease. Just make sure the layer underneath is dry first. The marker can also be watered down on a palette to create washes. Scribble on a palette to get the ink out and get your wet paintbrush in there. You can also mix in the black matter to the other paints on your palette to create some interesting greys and toned down versions of your colours. The more black you add, the darker the colour. Collage. Take inspiration from our featured artist and rip, scrunch and layer up pages of texture and mark making to create unique visual elements to your work. Then there is some Scrawlr tips. She kind of goes over the leaf, the way she did the leaf, the way she did the background, and the way to assemble. She also goes through using tissue to dab off the paint and kind of reduce the opacity of the paint, which was quite helpful. Also the fact that you can use this paint quite thickly. So here on my swatches I did a mixture of mixing the colours. I also did some dots and some thicker areas. I wanted to see how it would dry, whether it would flatten out and become a bit looser, but it actually dried quite thick. There were quite a lot of body to the paint, and you can create some lovely texture on there. I did use the pen underneath and then the paint on top, which worked very well, and I used the salt technique because I thought it would create quite a nice interesting texture. So my first experiment, so I do a couple of experiments here. I make some backgrounds, then I make 2 pieces of artwork, so do stick around. The second piece is probably my favourite, but it takes me a little while to get there. I was struggling a little bit with the colours and also just the way they worked. I did this wash background that you see me doing here. Firstly, my first mistake was that I ripped the paper out of the pad. Do not do that if you're intending to do a wash. As you can see, it's buckling quite heavily and I did have to tape it down after a bit. Not my brightest idea, but just to warn anyone who wants to do that. Okay, I couldn't resist adding a bit of ASMR in there, it sounded so good. But yes, do try and keep the paper in the pad if you're going to do these washes, it will help with buckling. I think I should have mixed the paint on a palette and watered it down first before adding it to my wet piece of paper, because the paint kind of just globuled there and I needed to add a hell of a lot more water and a lot of paint swirls to mix the colours, and it probably didn't turn out how I wanted it to. However, this more greeny page that you can see here, I thought I would follow in the featured artist's kind of way of doing things, and I ripped the paper and it gave this really nice deckled edge. And then my first idea was mycelium, which is the fungal network that's beneath us. So basically it's kind of a network of fine fungus underneath, and it's usually around trees, but there is a theory that the whole world is connected via the mycelium network, but this is what mushrooms fruit from. So a mushroom, technically, I don't know, you could say it's a little bit of a fruit, so that's kind of my vibe going with this. I thought I would separate the tree and the mycelium and do this lovely network underneath where you can just see the kind of colourful background through these dark areas of ground, so the colourfulness is the actual mycelium itself, and this worked out pretty well. I like the look of it. It's very different to something I would usually do, and I found the pen struggled. This obviously had a lot of salt on it. There probably is a little bit of residue. There's quite a lot of thicker paint on there, and the pen definitely struggled to go over this. I had a lot of issues. As you can see here, it's just running out. Even when I pump it, it wasn't working quite as well as I wanted it to, but in the end, I think this artwork is quite nice, and I like the theory behind it. I just don't know if I executed it how it should have been executed, so I definitely think I might revisit this art idea in the future. But it's nice. It's just very different from my art style. But I'll let you watch the rest of this bit, and then I'll come back in when we talk about the next piece of artwork. So for this next piece of artwork, I was really inspired by an artist over on Instagram called Yetee Brock Art. She actually used the supplies in the box to create some poppy seed head painting, and I loved it so much. So I had a little chat with her, and she actually came up with the idea of doing some honesty seed heads, because with the reason I chose the mycelium in the first part was because obviously the Scrawlr challenge was organic origins, and mycelium is beneath us, and a lot of things grow from it, and a lot of things thrive from it, like trees, etc. But then I loved Katie's kind of version of a seed head, and the fact that seeds are what a lot of plants originate from. So I really enjoyed the idea, and like I say, I chatted with Katie and she came up with the honesty plant, and if you've never seen an honesty seed head, it's beautiful. It's this very like see-through, transparent, beautiful looking seed head where you can actually see the seeds through it. Very, very pretty to look at. And originally they are a bit on the reddy pinky side, but obviously we don't have those colours, so I had to just work with what I had. I definitely struggled to get that transparent vibe. As you can see here at this point, I have had I've dabbed off the paint and I've made it a transparent, almost watercolour look, but as I went through it to kind of create the seed head look, the seeds through them, I kind of made it a little bit more opaque than I would have liked. So it's not quite where it's at, but it's something, again, I would really like to revisit in the future. But I think the idea turned out quite nice. So I thank Katie for that, for giving me the idea and for making a piece of artwork that I was really, really pleased with. So that is the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye bye.